I remember the day I joined Marshall & Reed like it was yesterday. Fresh MBA, ambitious smile, and a belief that hard work would be the only currency that mattered. 8 years later, I found myself standing in the corner of our Boston office, holiday party, watching my idea being presented by Eric, my colleague who had joined the firm 3 months ago. This strategic pivot will increase our market share by an estimated 14% in the first quarter alone, he announced confidently, using slides I had drafted 6 weeks earlier and submitted to our department head, Vivian. The executives nodded approvingly. The same executives who had told me my proposal was interesting but not aligned with our current priorities when I presented it during a department meeting. I sipped my champagne slowly, letting the bubbles numb the familiar sting. This wasn't the first time. 3 promotions had gone to less experienced colleagues in the past 2 years. My performance reviews were always excellent, but somehow, I remained stuck in the same position while watching others climb. "You're too valuable where you are," Vivian would say during our one-on-ones. "The team relies on your expertise." The praise came with a gentle pat on my shoulder, but never with the title change or salary bump that should have accompanied it. At home that night, I stared at my laptop screen, scrolling through LinkedIn updates of former classmates leading teams, launching products, and reshaping industries. I closed the browser and opened my performance metrics instead. My client retention rate was 94%, the highest in the department. Projects I managed consistently came in under budget and over client expectations. The numbers didn't lie, but they also didn't seem to matter. The next morning I arrived earlier than usual. The office was quiet, with only the cleaning staff moving between cubicles. I made myself coffee and walked to the conference room where our weekly strategy meeting would take place in 2 hours. I wanted to prepare to make sure I had every fact, every figure memorized. As I approached, I heard voices. Through the partially open door, I could see Vivian sitting with Eric and James, our regional director. "So we're agreed then," James was saying. "We'll announce Eric's promotion to senior manager next week. He'll take over the Westlake account." Westlake? My account, the client I had personally brought in and nurtured for 3 years. "What about the current account manager?" James asked, failing to even remember my name. "They'll understand it's a strategic decision," Vivian replied. "Besides, we need someone with Eric's presence for a client this significant." Presence. The word echoed in my mind as I quietly stepped back from the door. I knew exactly what it meant in the coded language of our industry. It meant someone who looked the part, someone who resembled the leadership, someone who wasn't me. I walked back to my desk, my coffee now cold in my hands. 8 years of exceeding targets, of early mornings and late nights, of canceled vacations and missed family gatherings, all reduced to lacking presence. I opened my drawer and pulled out a leather-bound notebook my father had given me when I graduated. "To write your success story," the inscription read. I had filled it with ideas, strategies, and client insights over the years. I flipped to a blank page and began to write. Not notes for tomorrow's meeting or another proposal to be stolen, but something else entirely. A plan. I spent the weekend drafting my resignation letter, then deleted it. Something felt wrong about leaving on their terms. I needed to be strategic, not emotional. Monday arrived with a familiar heaviness as I watched Eric settle into his new corner office, my former client files already stacked on his desk. "Quick meeting?" I texted Jesse from accounting. We had started at Marshall & Reed the same week and shared lunches when our schedules aligned. 20 minutes later, we sat in the building's courtyard far from curious ears. "They're announcing Eric's promotion next week," I said, "and giving him Westlake." Jesse winced. I don't even know what to say, that's your account." "Apparently, I lack the necessary presence," I replied, making air quotes. "That's such bullshit." Her directness was refreshing. "What are you going to do?" I hesitated. Saying it aloud would make it real. "I think I'm done here." "About time," she said without missing a beat. "This place doesn't deserve you." Back at my desk, I received an email from Carl Westlake himself. "Can we discuss the quarterly projections? Numbers seem off." Available tomorrow? I glanced toward the conference room where Eric was laughing with James. Neither had bothered to loop me in on any transition plans for my, Eric's account. I replied to Carl, absolutely. Coffee at Morton's, 9 a.m. That night, I pulled data from our secure server. Nothing confidential, just my own presentation decks and strategy documents I'd authored and client correspondence. Materials I had created, my intellectual property. I told myself this wasn't theft, it was preservation of my work product. The next morning, Carl greeted me with a firm handshake. At 67, he had built Westlake Industries from his garage into a $200 million business. He didn't trust easily, but we had developed a rapport based on honesty and results. So what's this about my quarterly numbers? He asked after ordering. Nothing's wrong with your numbers, Carl. But there's something you should know. I'm being replaced as your account manager. His bushy eyebrows furrowed. Replaced? Why the hell would they do that? We've increased our spending with Marshall by 22% since you took over. The official line will be strategic realignment, I explained. The real reason is more complicated. Try me. So I did. I told him about the stolen ideas, the overlooked promotions, the coded language. As I spoke, I realized this was the first time I had verbalized the full pattern of what had been happening. Sounds like you have a decision to make, Carl said when I finished. I think I already have. I took a deep breath. I'm leaving Marshall and Reed. I wanted you to hear it from me directly. Carl nodded slowly, then leaned forward. And what's next for you? I hadn't planned to discuss this, but something in his expression encouraged honesty. I'm considering starting my own consulting practice. Smaller scale, more personalized service. Interesting. He sipped his coffee. Westlake could use that kind of service. I blinked. Carl, I wasn't suggesting. I know you weren't, but I'm a businessman. I don't hire companies. I hire people I trust. The logo on your business card has never mattered to me. He set down his cup. Send me a proposal when you're ready. That evening I received a calendar invite from Vivian for Friday. Transition discussion, Westlake account. 3 days. Away. Perfect timing. I spent those days methodically preparing. I contacted 3 other clients I had particularly strong relationships with and arranged discreet coffee meetings. I consulted an attorney about non-compete clauses. Mine was limited and largely unenforceable in our state. I researched office spaces, accounting software, and LLC formation. Friday morning arrived. I dressed carefully in my most confident outfit and packed 2 copies of a crisp professional letter in my bag. When I entered Vivian's office, Eric was already there, looking smugly comfortable. Thanks for joining us, Vivian began with corporate formality. As you know, we're making some organizational changes to better serve our key accounts. I nodded pleasantly as she continued with rehearsed talking points about fresh perspectives and strategic alignment. Eric occasionally interjected with details of his vision for my client. When they finally paused, expecting my gracious acquiescence, I smiled and reached into my bag. I appreciate you both taking the time to discuss this transition, I said, sliding the first envelope across the desk to Vivian. This might streamline the process. Vivian's expression shifted as she read my resignation letter. The carefully composed corporate mask slipped, revealing genuine surprise. Eric's smirk faded. This is unexpected, Vivian stammered, suddenly off script. I thought we were discussing the Westlake transition. We are, I replied calmly. I'm simply clarifying that the transition will be complete. Westlake won't be working with Marshall and Reed anymore. Eric laughed nervously. You can't make that decision for a client. I didn't, I said, maintaining eye contact with Vivian. Carl Westlake made it yesterday when he signed with my new consulting firm. I slid the second envelope across the desk. His termination of services letter. He asked me to deliver it personally. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Vivian opened the second envelope with visibly unsteady hands. This is highly inappropriate, she managed finally. We have non-solicitation agreements. Actually, we don't. Not for clients who initiate the separation. My attorney had been very clear on this point. Carl approached me after learning of the planned account transfer. He was quite disappointed with how Marshall and Reed has been handling things. Eric's face had turned an interesting shade of purple. This is sabotage. I smiled. This is business. I stood up, smoothing my jacket. My resignation is effective immediately. I've already cleared my desk and returned my company property to HR. As I turned to leave, Vivian found her voice again. Wait. Perhaps we've been hasty. We could discuss your concerns, maybe revisit the promotion track. The desperation in her voice gave me no satisfaction. Just confirmation that I had made the right decision. I appreciate the offer, but my decision is final. I paused at the door. You told me once I was too valuable in my position. You were right about the valuable part. The office felt different as I walked out for the last time. Colleagues stared as words spread rapidly through departmental instant messages and whispered conversations. Jessie caught my eye from her desk and gave me a subtle thumbs up. Outside, spring rain was falling. The gentle kind that washes everything clean. I stepped into it without opening my umbrella, letting the coolness settle on my skin. For the first time in years, I felt weightless. My phone buzzed with a text from Carl. Just got a panicked call from James. Well done. Dinner next week to discuss strategy? I smiled and typed back, looking forward to it. Over the next 2 weeks, I operated out of a temporary office space, downtown while setting up my new business. My days blurred into focused productivity, registering the LLC, designing minimal but elegant branding, and creating service packages tailored to what I knew clients actually needed rather than what would generate the highest billable hours. When the call came from Diana Evans at Meridian Technologies, another major Marshall and Reed client, I wasn't entirely surprised. I heard you've gone independent, she said, skipping pleasantries. Carl Westlake has been singing your praises. Says you provide the service quality of a major firm with the attention of a boutique operation. That's the goal, I replied. Meridian is reviewing our consulting relationships this quarter, she continued. I'd like to see a proposal from you. By the end of the month, I had secured 4 clients, all former Marshall and Reed accounts. I hired my first employee, a brilliant recent graduate who reminded me of myself 8 years ago. Except I promised her a clear advancement path with transparent metrics. The downtown office space became permanent. I hung a single framed quote on the wall behind my desk. Your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. It wasn't just decoration, it was a business philosophy. 6 weeks after my resignation, James called. The conversation was brief. Marshall and Reed was struggling to retain clients. My departure had triggered others, creating a talent exodus. They wanted to discuss a mutually beneficial arrangement, perhaps a partnership. I listened politely, then declined. I'm not interested in looking backward, I told him. But I wish you all the best. That evening, I stayed late at the office reviewing our first quarter projections. The numbers looked strong, better than I had dared hope. Through the window, I could see the Marshall and Reed building, its upper floors still illuminated. I used to watch the same lights from the inside, wondering if I'd ever find a way to break through that invisible ceiling. Now I had my answer. Sometimes breaking through isn't the solution. Sometimes you need to build something entirely new, on your own terms, with a foundation strong enough that no one can make you doubt your worth again. I never expected growth to happen so quickly. Within 4 months, my client roster had expanded to 11 businesses, with inquiries coming in weekly. What began as a personal rebellion against workplace injustice had evolved into something I barely had time to comprehend. I hired 3 more employees, all exceptional talents who had been overlooked elsewhere, and moved to a larger office space overlooking the harbor. Success brought its own challenges. Managing cash flow during rapid expansion tested my business acumen. Delegation didn't come naturally after years of trying to prove my individual worth. Some nights I slept on the office couch, surrounded by spreadsheets and half-empty coffee cups, wondering if I had overextended. My father visited from Chicago during this chaotic period and found me buried in work on a Sunday afternoon. "This place looks impressive," he said, glancing around at the sleek new furniture and floor-to-ceiling windows. "But you look terrible." I laughed tiredly. "Thanks for the honesty." He picked up a framed photo on my desk, the team at RI. "First client appreciation dinner. Do you remember what I told you when you took that corporate job? That I'd be working just as hard for someone else's dream as I would for my own." He nodded. "Now you're working twice as hard for your own dream, but you're missing something important." "Sleep?" I suggested. "Joy," he corrected. "What's the point of building something if you're too exhausted to feel proud of it?" His words stayed with me after he left. I had escaped one trap only to create another. The next morning, I called an emergency team meeting. "We need to restructure," I announced. "I've been approaching this all wrong." Together, we reorganized our workflows, clarified roles, and established boundaries between work and personal time. I stopped treating every client request as an emergency and learned to price our services at their true value rather than undercutting to win business, a habit born from years of trying to prove my worth. The transformation wasn't instant, but it was profound. By setting appropriate boundaries, we actually improved client satisfaction. By charging properly, we attracted clients who valued quality over cost-cutting. Revenue stabilized, and for the first time, I took a weekend completely off. That Saturday morning, I wandered through the Cambridge Farmers Market, relishing the simple pleasure of having nowhere particular to be. I was examining a display of heirloom tomatoes when someone called my name. I turned to find Diana Evans from Meridian Technologies, dressed in casual clothes and carrying a basket of produce. "I hardly recognized you without a laptop in front of you," she joked. "I'm trying something new. They call it free time," I replied, still getting used to it. We chatted briefly about life outside work, and I was about to say goodbye when she mentioned something that froze me mid-sentence. "Have you heard the latest about Marshall & Reed? They're being acquired." "By whom?" I asked, suddenly alert. "Thorncroft Global. Announcement went out yesterday. Word is they're specifically interested in rebuilding the client portfolio that—" She trailed off, looking slightly embarrassed. "That I took with me," I finished for her. "Exactly. Thorncroft specializes in aggressive growth. They buy firms, consolidate operations, then scale with massive resources." Diana selected a bunch of kale, then met my gaze directly. "Just thought, you should know. They play hardball." That evening, instead of enjoying the restaurant reservation I'd made weeks ago, I hunched over my laptop researching Thorncroft Global. Diana wasn't exaggerating. Their business model relied on identifying smaller competitors and either acquiring them or crushing them through predatory pricing and legal intimidation. Monday morning, I received an email from an unfamiliar address. Logan Pierce, Chief Strategy Officer at Thorncroft Global, requesting a meeting to discuss mutual interest in the Boston market. My finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity won out. I agreed to coffee the following day. Logan arrived precisely on time, impeccably dressed in what I recognized as a bespoke suit that probably cost more than my first car. He was younger than I expected, perhaps mid-40s, with the polished confidence that comes from a lifetime of doors opening without resistance. "Thank you for meeting," he began after minimal pleasantries. "I'll be direct. Your firm has made quite an impact in a short time." "We focus on client outcomes rather than billable hours," I replied. "It's a surprisingly novel approach." He smiled thinly. "Indeed, that focus has resulted in significant client migration from Marshall & Reed, which now impacts our investment. I don't see how their client retention issues concern me." "Let me clarify," he said, leaning forward. "Thorncroft has acquired Marshall & Reed specifically to expand in sectors where your clients operate. This creates an awkward overlap." The implication hung in the air between us. "Are you suggesting I should turn away my clients?" I asked incredulously. "Not at all. His smile never reached his eyes. I'm suggesting you consider a lucrative absorption into the Thorncroft family. Your client relationships would strengthen our portfolio, and you would receive appropriate compensation. It was a buyout offer wrapped in corporate speak. I recognized the power play. Thorncroft wanted what I had built, without the messy business of competing for it. I appreciate the interest, I said carefully, but my firm isn't for sale. Logan's expression didn't change, but something hardened behind his eyes. Consider the alternative carefully. Thorncroft competes at a scale you cannot match. We have resources, legal teams, and global reach. The threat was clear, yet strangely, I felt no fear, only clarity. Thank you for the coffee, Mr. Pierce. I'll give your proposal all the consideration it deserves. As I walked away, my phone buzzed with an email notification. The subject line read, Thorncroft Global announces aggressive expansion in Boston market. The battle lines had been drawn. Thorncroft's first move came within days. They slashed consulting rates by 40% for services comparable to ours. Their second move was more personal. They hired Eric, my former colleague, to lead their client retention division, a transparent attempt to leverage his knowledge of my operations. They're burning cash to starve us out, explained Marcus, my financial advisor during our emergency strategy session. They can sustain losses longer than we can. Jesse, who had recently joined us after leaving Marshall and Reed, added, they've also doubled commission rates for bringing in new clients. The sales team is practically going door to door. I stared at the market analysis on my tablet. Thorncroft's strategy was textbook. Use their scale to create unsustainable market conditions, wait for smaller competitors to fold, then raise prices once the field was cleared. The approach was ruthlessly effective. They expect us to either match their pricing and bleed out or lose clients and starve, I summarized. Either way, they're counting on our collapse. The room fell silent as the reality of our situation sank in. We had been in business less than a year. Our financial reserves wouldn't withstand a prolonged price war. So what's our play? Asked Tarek, our newest analyst and the most direct member of the team. I closed the market report. We don't play their game at all. Over the next week, we developed what I called our depth strategy. While Thorncroft offered broad services at unsustainable rates, we would specialize in areas where their massive structure created blind spots. I personally called each of our clients to explain our approach. We won't match their pricing, I told Carl Westlake candidly. We can't, but what we offer isn't available on their menu regardless of price. Most clients appreciated the honesty, but we still lost 2 smaller accounts to Thorncroft's aggressive pricing. The defections stung, but our core business remained stable, for the moment. Then came the rumors. A potential client called to cancel our proposal meeting, explaining awkwardly that he'd heard we were having financial difficulties. Another mentioned concerns about pending litigation. When Diana Evans forwarded me an email she'd received questioning my professional credentials, I finally understood Thorncroft's next tactic: reputation sabotage. The whispering campaign accelerated. Prospective clients grew hesitant. Existing clients began asking pointed questions about our stability. Our growth flatlined. This is a systematic attack, Jessie fumed during our weekly management meeting. And it's working. She was right. We could survive current conditions, but not indefinite stagnation. We needed to change the dynamic. That night, I called my father again. After explaining the situation, I asked the question weighing heaviest on my mind. Am I being stubborn? Should I take their buyout offer while it's still available? His response was measured. That depends. Why did you start this company? To create something better than what existed, I answered immediately. To build a place where talent is recognized and valued properly. And has that changed? I considered the question carefully. No. If anything, seeing Thorncroft's tactics has reinforced why alternatives need to exist. Then you have your answer, he said simply. The question isn't whether you should fight, it's how. The next morning I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. Coffee? Same place, 3 p.m. LP. Logan Pierce wanted another meeting. Despite my better judgment, curiosity won again. He seemed more relaxed this time, his corporate armor slightly lowered. Our previous conversation was perhaps too adversarial. He began. I'd like to try a different approach. I'm listening. Thorncroft is reassessing its Boston strategy. Your resilience has been noted. My superiors are impressed. The compliment felt calculated. What does that mean practically? It means our buyout offer has been increased, substantially. He named a figure that momentarily took my breath away. Enough money to secure my financial future regardless of what happened next. Why? I asked, genuinely puzzled. You could continue your current strategy and eventually wear us down. Why pay a premium? Logan hesitated, then answered with unexpected candor. Time value. Yes, we could probably outlast you, but the battle is becoming conspicuous. Clients are noticing. Questions are being asked about our methods. I nodded slowly, understanding, dawning. The whispering campaign had created market uncertainty, and uncertainty was bad for everyone's business. Even Thorncroft was feeling the effects. I need to consider all options, I said neutrally. Of course, but don't consider too long. The warning was velvet-covered but unmistakable. The offer expires in 48 hours. Back at the office, I called an all-hands meeting. I shared the buyout offer transparently, explaining both the opportunity and the deadline. This is everyone's decision, I concluded. We started this company because we believe in a different way of working. If we accept, that vision ends, but everyone here will benefit financially. The discussion lasted hours. Viewpoints varied, but a consistent theme emerged. None of us had left comfortable positions just for money. We had left to build something meaningful. As our debate continued, my phone chimed with an email notification. The message was from Carl Westlake, with several other clients copied. Concerned about recent market rumors, request urgent meeting to discuss service continuity. My stomach dropped. The client exodus was beginning. I stared at the message, feeling the weight of responsibility for every person in the room. The buyout would protect them. Refusal might cost them everything. Yet something felt fundamentally wrong about surrendering to Thorncroft's tactics. My thoughts were interrupted by a hand on my shoulder. It was Tarek, our most junior team member. Whatever you decide, he said quietly. I trust you. We all do. That's why we're here. His simple statement crystallized something I had been struggling to articulate. Trust was the foundation of everything we had built. Trust with clients, trust within our team. It was also precisely what Thorncroft's tactics were designed to undermine. In that moment, I knew what we needed to do. It wasn't about outspending Thorncroft or matching their aggressive moves. It was about changing the IEB conversation entirely. I think, I said slowly, it's time we brought everything into the light. Instead of meeting with Carl and our concerned clients individually, I proposed something unprecedented, a joint session with all our clients present. The room we rented at the Four Seasons was elegant but understated. No elaborate presentations, no marketing materials, just coffee, pastries, and honest conversation. Thank you all for coming, I began, looking around at the faces of people who had trusted us with their business. You've heard rumors about our company. Today, I want to address them directly. I laid out everything. Thorncroft's acquisition of Marshall & Reed, their buyout offer, the price-slashing strategy, and the whispering campaign. I shared financial details that companies typically guard jealously, showing exactly where WD stood. We're not in financial distress, I explained, displaying our latest quarterly report. But we are under attack from a competitor using methods that, while legal, raise ethical questions. The room was uncomfortably silent. I had broken every convention of business propriety by exposing competitive tactics so nakedly. I might have just destroyed the very trust I was trying to preserve. Then Carl Westlake cleared his throat. Let me get this straight. Thorncroft is spending millions to buy and restructure Marshall & Reed, millions more undercutting market rates, all to capture the business model you've created? That appears to be the case, I admitted. Carl chuckled. Sounds like you're doing something very right. He turned to address the other clients. I don't know about the rest of you, but I've seen this movie before. A conglomerate swallows smaller firms, promises the same service at lower rates, then gradually reduces quality while raising prices once alternatives are eliminated. Diana Evans from Meridian nodded. We dropped 3 different consulting groups over the past decade for exactly that reason. The conversation shifted as clients began sharing their own experiences with corporate consolidation. The mood in the Po room transformed from tension to something more collegial, a group of businesses discussing a shared challenge rather than a supplier defending its existence. What are you proposing? Asked Haruto Tanaka from Eastbridge Systems, who had been quietly observing until now. A different kind of relationship, I replied. Complete transparency about our costs and margins, long-term contracts with guaranteed rates, and most importantly, a client advisory board with real input into our service development. You're essentially offering us partnership without equity, noted Diana. I'm offering stability and quality with accountability, I corrected, something Thorncroft's model fundamentally cannot provide. The discussion lasted hours longer than scheduled. By the end, not only had we retained every client in that room, but we had restructured our entire business model. The new contracts would provide us with the stable cash flow needed to weather Thorncroft's campaign, while giving clients the certainty they required. As people began to leave, Carl lingered. Bold move today, he said. Risky. Necessary, I replied. We couldn't fight their resources directly. No, he agreed. But you did something better. You changed the rules. He shook my hand firmly. I'm looking forward to our continued partnership. That evening, as the 48-hour deadline approached, I emailed Logan Pierce. After careful consideration, we must decline your offer. Our business is not for sale at any price. His response came minutes later. Decision noted. Unfortunate. More difficult path ahead. The threat was clear, but no longer frightening. We had found solid ground to stand on. The next 6 months were challenging but transformative. Thorncroft continued their aggressive pricing, but our new contract structure provided stability. They escalated their marketing, so we responded with case studies demonstrating our results. When they attempted to poach our talent with inflated salary offers, we implemented an employee ownership program that gave everyone a stake in our success. What surprised me most was how quickly word spread. Other small consulting firms reached out to learn about our client advisory model. 2 even proposed strategic alliances to provide complementary services. By adapting to Thorncroft's pressure, we had inadvertently created an alternative ecosystem that strengthened all independent providers. 18 months after our confrontation began, I received an unexpected email from Logan Pierce requesting another meeting. This time I suggested my office. He looked different, more tired, less certain. The corporate armor had developed noticeable cracks. Thorncroft is reassessing its Boston strategy, he began, echoing our previous conversation almost verbatim. I've heard, I replied. Industry rumors suggested their aggressive expansion had produced disappointing results. We're considering a more collaborative approach moving forward, he continued carefully. Perhaps there are partnership opportunities that would benefit both organizations. The irony wasn't lost on me. They had tried to destroy us, then buy us, and now wanted to work with us. I should have felt vindicated, even smug. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Empathy. Logan was doing his job in a corporate culture that valued dominance above all else. How different was that from my years struggling within Marshall & Reed's broken system? I'm open to discussing specific projects where collaboration makes sense for our clients, I offered. But our independence remains non-negotiable. Relief flickered across his face. He had expected rejection. That's a reasonable starting point. We talked for another hour, exploring potential areas of complementary expertise. No commitments were made, but possibilities emerged. As he was leaving, Logan paused at the door. "You could have gone public with our tactics," he said. "Created quite a PR problem for us. Why didn't you?" I considered the question. Because this was never about destroying something. It was about building something better. 3 years have passed since I walked out of Vivian's office with my resignation letter. What began as an act of self-preservation has evolved into a thriving business with 27 employees and a client list that grows thoughtfully rather than aggressively. We've developed a reputation not just for quality work, but for leadership in creating more equitable business practices. Last month, I was asked to deliver the keynote at the Regional Business Ethics Conference, ironically, in the same hotel where Marshall and Reed once held their holiday parties. My father attended that speech. Afterward, he handed me a small package, a new leather-bound notebook to replace the one I had filled. "For the next chapter of your success story," the inscription read. I keep both notebooks on my desk now. The first reminds me of where this journey began, with frustration, anger, and determination to prove my worth. The second represents what I've learned since, that true success isn't about validation from others or victory over opponents. It's about creating spaces where value is recognized, where work has meaning, and where people can grow without having to tear others down. It's about building something that reflects your values so clearly that even your adversaries eventually see its worth. Some might call what happened with Thorncroft a victory. I prefer to think of it as an evolution, proof that even in business, there's room for something more meaningful than simply winning or losing. There's room for transformation.